Hello, friends. Today we're going to be talking about writing multiple stories at the same time. This is something that I've noticed some authors do, and most authors don't. Let me requalify that. Most amateur authors do, and most professional authors don't. And I want to talk about why that is, because I don't think that the reasons for it are quite as clear as you might expect. I think that every author, when they start writing, finds themselves in this same position. Often you have tons and tons of different story ideas, and they may start out as one story, but over time your brain starts shifting into this story and that story, and you have all of these different ideas, and you might try to mesh them together, but more often than not, you're going to write a little bit of this story and then a little bit of that story, and that's totally normal. That is part of the process of learning how to write. But there comes a point in your writing life, in your author career, when you have to finish a story. And until that moment appears, until that pressure exists, there really isn't a reason not to just write a whole bunch of stories simultaneously. And often when I was in that position, when I was just sort of writing this story and that story and every other story, it felt to me like the ideas that I had were sort of intangible. They were going to slip away. And if I didn't hurry and write them down, they wouldn't stick around. Over time, though, I came to realize that that's actually a good thing. It's not bad if ideas slip away. When we're new authors, we sometimes have this impression that the ideas we have are very, very valuable. And I know I've talked about this in a previous video, but in reality, they're not. Ideas are just ideas. And while we fear that we might lose ideas, we might allow the best ideas to vanish, that's not going to happen. See, one of the biggest lessons that I learned was that good ideas stick around. Good ideas will keep coming back over and over and over again. You'll have the idea, and then you'll think about it for a while, and then you'll forget, and you'll move on to something else, and then 2 years later, you'll be in the shower, and then all of a sudden, boom, it pops back into your head, and it is bright and vivid, and you can see it exactly. And all of the problems that you had with the original idea have now been worked out. And the reason this happens is just because we get better at writing. See, this is the thing about being in this, confusing mix where you're writing a ton of different stories simultaneously. What's happening is that your brain is trying new and novel things, and it's still in the learning process. Now, that doesn't mean that you stop learning once you switch to single story at a time. But once you get there, once you're actually able to finish a story, it means that you have a degree of mastery over your craft. The rise of web novelists has led to an interesting phenomenon where people will start a ton of different series. And, I'm actually, I'm guilty of this myself. Right? They'll start a ton of different series. And because they're posting their stories online, they will have to write chapters in each story at the same time. And so they end up working on like 3 or 4 projects, sometimes even more than that. And there are some people who seem to be able to do this very well. However, in my experience, and this is my experience, so, take it with a grain of salt. But in my experience, that style of writing is never going to be as efficient or even as good as just writing a single story all the way through. And then once you finish that story, starting the next one. And so though I did come from this world of writing multiple series simultaneously and releasing chapters, and having to write chapters in each story every day, I've now settled on a different methodology. And that is that I have a lot of series going. I have like 6 or 7 series that are active. But instead of writing a little bit in each one every day, I batch. I write a book at a time in each of these different series. Sometimes I take a month or 2, 3 months, 4 months, whatever it is, and I write a bunch of books in one series, and then I move on to another series. And obviously people have different reasons for what they do. But if you are in a position where you are writing a bunch of different stories, I would suggest that you probably need to stop. You probably need to just finish something. It doesn't matter if you like the ending or not. It doesn't matter if you're excited about it. You just need to finish it. And then you need to get into the habit of finishing stories. This is probably the biggest problem I see with the way writers, modern writers, especially those of us who come from the internet world, are trained to write. We're trained to write with no end. And part of that is just because a lot of our stories never ended. They just sort of faded into obscurity, or they're still ongoing. This is one of the biggest marks between an amateur and a professional, the ability to end. Now, I know I actually only have one series that has an ending. And even that ending is kind of a cop-out, because I then just continued on into another series because I liked writing those characters so much. But every single one of my books does have an end. And I'm slowly working up towards series ends as well, which will be it. And so, for instance, in December, book 9 in the Battle Mage Farmer series comes out, and that's it for that series. I'm not going to write any more inside that series. Now, I am doing some adjacent series in that world because I enjoy it so much. But that's going to be a contained thing. And every single one of my books ends with the intent of wrapping up what's happening in that book. And then, of course, because I'm in a series, setting up what's going to happen in the next. But it's this ability to finish something that really separates the amateur from the professional. And so if you're in that space of writing a little bit of this and a little bit of that, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with it. Understand that you're still in the learning phase of being a writer. But if you want to progress as a writer, one of the best things that you can do is just finish what you're working on. Put everything else aside. Say, you know what, I'm going to focus. I'm going to get this done. And then once it's done, I'll go back to other things. Don't worry that somehow the ideas are going to vanish from your head. You're not going to have them anymore. No, those ideas are going to be there if they're good ideas. And if they're not good ideas, that's fine. It's okay to let them go. You're going to have better ideas. When you come back to a manuscript you were working on for a while that you put aside so you could finish something else, and you read through it, you're going to have new ideas. You're going to have new insights into the way the story should go, into what the characters should do. And you're going to be a better writer. So the end result is going to be even better than it was. At the end of the day, writing is an intensely personal thing. So obviously you have to do it the way you want. But if your intent is to do this whole writing thing in a professional way, if it is to be an author, then learning how to finish your books is way more important than any other skill you will acquire.